Okay, let's go through the 3 weeks and jump to Tisha B'Av. Let's begin with the first ever Tisha B'Av.
Wait, Rabbi, wait.
Well, I'm waiting. I can't be too much like this. If I knew what this was, I wouldn't be too much like it.
What page are we on?
113.
You're being like apurado. I don't know. Wait, 30 or 13?
113.
Thank you.
Okay, let's talk about what's called the 3 weeks, as we refer to it as, which culminates on the 9th of Av, which is called Tisha B'Av. Done. 113. Let's start with the Parsha, the Torah portion in Bamidbar, Yud Gimel. And we're going to go right back to the beginning of the Jewish people. We know that Moshe Rabbeinu sent in 12 spies into Israel. 12 spies were sent into the land of Israel. And a number of them, specifically 10, what we refer to as a minyan or an Ada, came back with a negative report from this adventure. They came back and they spoke Lashon Hara about Israel, which I have a lot to talk about and say about it, but doesn't really fit too much into this. There's a little bit, but Lashon Hara is bad. We're connecting Lashon Hara to this topic immediately, and we're specifically targeting Lashon Hara against the land of Israel as well. You can't miss, that's part of the original story, okay? So what happened? They delivered a bad report about the land they had spies. These 12 spies went in, 2 came back with a positive report, 10 came back with a bad report. 10 makes up a minyan, it's an Ada, it's a community. That's the minute this is one of the sources we learned out that 10 Jewish males make up a minyan, a grouping. They came back with Lashon Hara. This was bad. The Jewish people believed what they said. Remember, the thing that we don't like about Lashon Hara is speaking it, but worse than speaking it is believing it. Says the Rambam. Of the 3 people involved in Lashon Hara, the one speaking, the one listening, and the one being spoken about, of the 3, the one who speaks and believes it is the worst of all of them. So they cried, V'tisa kol ha'eda. See the word Eda appears over here? The entire group cried, V'yitnu et kolam, v'yivku ha'am b'laylahu. They cried that entire night. That night that they received this report, they believed about all the scary stuff that was happening. You know, by the way, it was true what they said. The report they came back with was true. And we learned from here, by the way, that Lashon Hara, in order to be Lashon Hara, gossip and destructive speech, has to be true. However, they didn't put their faith in Hashem, and they cried that entire night. And according to the number of days that they spied, that was 40 days, they were given 40 years. 1 day, 1 year, they were stuck in the Midbar. So because they believed the Lashon Hara on that night, and they cried that entire night, the amount of time it took to tour the land, that was 40 days, which is sort of miraculous. It takes more than 40 days to see all of Israel. They didn't appreciate even that miracle. They ended up staying in the Midbar for 40 years. So this was a sin that kept them out of Israel, which we learn as well, that Lashon Hara keeps you in galut, keeps you in exile. Nachon? It's pretty obvious. They spoke Lashon Hara, they believed Lashon Hara, and they were kept out of Israel. So Lashon Hara, we know, equals galut, exile as well. Says the Gemara, since they believed the report of the spies, and they cried that entire night, Hashem said, you know what? You cried, Atem, Bechitem, Bechia Shel Chinam. You cried for no reason. You didn't have to cry. You could have had faith in me, and everything would have been okay, says Hashem. Vani kovel lachem bechia ledor. I'm going to give you a reason to cry. It's like when your kids complain. I'm getting into trouble, be in trouble. Eventually, like, you know, now you're in trouble. Right? You cry for no reason. When was this? When was this? This night happened to be the 9th of Av. And that means, from time immemorial, this date has been set into the Jewish calendar as a night of crying. There's a negative spiritual hashpa'ah force that comes into the world at this time, and even in the build-up to this time. The fact that Jews cried for nothing, despised the land, made for them a day of generation, says the Maharal, and actually, shahaya gorem shegalu min haaretz, and actually created a time they were going to be kicked out of the land. So we're going to keep our eye on that date. That date, the 9th of Av, is going to appear again and again throughout Jewish history, and it's going to be a very, very, very bad time for the Jewish people. Okay? Turn over the page. This is just Rav Dessler. We'll teach us the last paragraph, page 114. So you see that their cause was they didn't have faith in Hashem. After all Hashem did for them with all the miracles and all the plagues and the splitting of the sea, they still were lacking faith. They were nervous about going to Israel, which was understandable, but not acceptable. Okay? And they cried, they lacked faith in Hashem, and throughout the generations, this becomes a time of crying for the Jewish people. So we have 4 fasts of the Jewish people. Yeah.
Wait, so I'm confused. What's that, 3 weeks?
We're going to get there.
Oh,
The 3 weeks are going to be the 3 weeks leading up to it. The 3 weeks leading up to the day
so
itself.
We're done with Shavuot. The time related to Shavuot.
No, gone, finished, halas. We're now focusing on Tisha B'Av and the lead up to Tisha B'Av.
And Shavuot is how long after Shavuot?
It's not related to Shavuot.
It's like way after?
It's the next holiday that comes in Tisha B'Av.
It's the end of
Go
summer.
from Iyar to wherever it appears in the summer. Yeah. July, August time. Yeah.
So the
It's a
3
different
weeks
thing.
before, it's not 9 days?
No, no, no. There is a 3-week gap, we'll see. Then there's 9 days. And then there's the week itself. And then there's the day itself. We'll get to that.
Oh, okay.
We'll get to that. We'll see why the days increase when we get there. So it's not the day itself, it's the build-up as well. So we're going to get there, I promise you. They've just built up what the 4 fast days that relate to this. Yeah.
Are we going to talk about why we don't eat meat on these 9 days?
We're going to talk about that as well.
Why we what? Yeah.
Yes.
We don't?
Yes. Or drink wine.
But we also
Right.
count up, so it's very related to
This is
Shavuot, or
it's
no?
not related to Shavuot whatsoever. Leave Shavuot out of this.
Okay.
Maybe there's some tenuous connection. I don't know it. We're now discussing the destruction of the temple and that particular date that it happened on, which we're now showing goes back to the beginning of Jewish history. Got it? Okay, that's the 9th of Av.
But how do we know that?
How do we know what?
In the Torah.
Oh, the Torah itself does not mention the date. It's a tradition that this happened on that day.
Okay.
That's all. Okay? So we have 4 fast days that relate to the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. Okay? And let's have a look at the fast days themselves. Okay, now remember, we're counting the months from Nisan. So we have the fast of the 4th month, the fast of the 5th month, the fast of the 7th month, and the fast of the 10th month. Okay?
Is Tisha B'Av considered one of these?
Yes. Yes, it is. Let's have a look. Zechariah's count of the months is from the Jewish month of Nisan. Hence, the fast of the 4th month is the Shivas B'Tammuz. The 5th month is Tisha B'Av. The fast of the 7th month is Som Gedalia, which is in Tishrei, the day after Rosh Hashanah. And the 10th month is Aseret B'Tevet. All of these somehow relate to the destruction of the first and mostly the second Beit HaMikdash.
Wait, what was the last one?
That was the 10th Aseret B'Tevet, 10th of Tevet. Okay? So those are the 4 there are 6 fast days altogether. Those 4 of them we still have. The other 2 are Yom Kippur, which has nothing to do with this, and Tanit Esther, which has nothing to do with this either, we discussed already. So the other
So then
4
which ones are the 4? I'm confused.
we have Shiv. Absolutely, I'm going to write them down even. Write them down. No problem. No problem. My pleasure. We have 4 fast days related to the temple. One that we just discussed was the 9th of Av. We have the 17th of Tammuz, Shiva Asar Tammuz. 17th of Tammuz. We're going to have the 9th of Av,
But what fast
Okay.
is on the 17th of Tammuz?
Shiva Asar Tammuz. It's called, it's a
Oh,
fast day.
Shiva-
Yeah,
oh,
we'll
right,
see what
right.
happened on that day itself. There's a number of things happened on that particular day. From here to here is 3 weeks. Right?
Oh, those are the
Beit,
3
we're referred to as
weeks.
3 weeks or Beit Mitzarim. Right? Between the difficult challenges. These are the 3 weeks from 17th of Tammuz to the 9th of Av. Okay?
Beit HaTzarim?
Yes, between the challenges, right? 1, 2. We have 2 other fast days, which I'm not going to discuss, but you've got to know what they are, because there are only 6 fast days in the Jewish calendar. The next one is Som Gedalia, which is the day after Rosh Hashanah. Right? That falls in Tishrei. The last one is the 10th of Tevet. which occurs, you know, in the winter time, which is the short fast. Okay? And that's really, I believe, to do with the structure of the first base of Migdash as well. So these are the 4 fast days. We've done this before, right? Did we do this last semester? Right? 6 fast. We have Yom Kippur.
We did it
Then we have
by
Yom Kippur, and then we have
Tanis.
Tanit Esther.
We did it by Tanis.
Tanit Esther we discussed. Right? We discussed this, yeah. Right? The various fast
Not in
days.
this class.
Yeah, we did this class. We did, yeah. Okay, so those are our 6 fast days. These 4 on top, right, are the ones related to the temple. So what happened on here, and how did it lead to here? So let's have a look. There were basically, look at page 115. There are a number of things that happened, 5 of them that occurred on the 17th of Tammuz. It's called Shiva Asar Tammuz, the 17th of Tammuz. Number 1, the tablets, 10 commandments, were smashed by Moshe Rabbeinu on Har Sinai. Okay? When they saw the golden calf. So that's number 1. Remember, it's always rooted in history. Moshe Rabbeinu smashed the Aseret Dibrot. 2 daily sacrifices were suspended during the first temple period. 3, and this is the key one that everyone speaks of. There were 2 sacrifices that were stopped during the first temple. This is the Mishnah mentions it. What they know is not for now. Number 3, this is the key one. The breach of the walls of Jerusalem by the Romans prior to the destruction. Now this is the key one, okay? Everyone speaks about it. I'm going to tell you.
Oh, it's right here. The list says.
The list is on page 115. It's all there. You see it?
Yeah.
So what happened? So the Romans came at the time of the second base of Migdash, and there were walls around Yerushalayim, and they smashed through those outer walls, and they made their way, and it took them 3 weeks to burn, kill a vast amount of Jewish people right through Yerushalayim until they destroyed the temple on the 9th of Av. That was a 3-week period. So the entire 3 weeks, which started over here, which is the breaking of the outer walls of Yerushalayim, ended up over here with the destruction, the burning of the base of Migdash on the 9th of Av. So these entire 3 weeks, from the 17th of Tammuz to the 9th of Av, have traditionally been kept as days of mourning that increase in mourning. The 9 days before builds up, then Tisha B'Av itself, then the week Tisha B'Av falls, and then Tisha B'Av itself, and the various customs and communities that build up to that point. Bless you. So all of it is a 3-week experience from the breaking of the walls right through the destruction of the base of Migdash itself. Okay? Everyone got that clear? Great. Happens to be on that day as well that Apostolos burned the Torah as well. An idol was carried into the base of Migdash, says the Mishnah. Okay? At a different time of history, but we can leave that. The key one I want to talk about is the breaking of the walls of the outside. Okay? In the time of the second base of Migdash. Okay?
Who's Apostolos?
One of the Greeks. Not for now. Okay. So let's jump a page now. Page 116. The key one I want to get is this one. The walls. The walls. The walls.
We need to memorize these.
The walls is the one you have to focus on. That's the one. That's the one you have to focus on. I mentioned the Mishnah has all 5 of them, but the walls is the one.
Why did you say 5 things occurred? You should have just said one
It's
and
not
one
me, it's the
thing
Mishnah.
occurred.
It's the Mishnah.
Do we only know the wall?
Number 3?
Okay, so we'll have it on Tisha B'Av. Now this one is important. The Mishnah tells us 5 things happen on Tisha B'Av as well. Okay?
How many do we need to know?
All 5. Chamsa. Number 1. It was decreed upon our ancestors not to enter into Israel. Okay? That was the report of the spies we just mentioned. That's number 1. Okay? There was a decree that our ancestors should not enter into Israel, stay in Galut, because the Lashon Hara they accepted. Number 2, the first temple was destroyed on the 9th of Av. Number 3, the second temple was destroyed on the 9th of Av. 4, there was a city outside Jerusalem called Beitar that was captured as well. And number 5, at a later point, Jerusalem was plowed over. They came and they just destroyed the entire city. That was many years later, but on that date itself.
Wait, what's the 4th?
There was a city called Beitar that was captured, and Jerusalem, many years later, I believe, was plowed over and made into a Churban, a complete another destroyed city that it stood like for 2,000 years. That's the Mishnah of the 5 things that happen on Tisha B'Av. So we go from the 5 bad things that happen on Shiva Asar Tammuz to the 5 things that happen on Tisha B'Av. Of course, the main ones over there are the first temple being destroyed on that date and the second temple. So that same date, the 9th of Av, from when the Jewish people cried, has remained with us as well. I will mention that other things have happened on this date as well, right through history. The expulsion from Spain in 1492, which was a massive tragedy,
The same year Christopher Columbus discovered America.
right, that he left, was on the 9th of Av as well. It is actually. In addition to that, if I remember correctly, Auschwitz was opened on the 9th of Av as well. Auschwitz was opened on the 9th of Av. That was its first opera. I checked this actually when I was in Auschwitz last year, and it does coincide with the 9th day of Av. It does correspond to that day of Av. So this day, we are careful on that date. We're going to fast on it, but we'll see the build up to it, right? The Gemara is going to tell us that if people have certain things going on in their lives, vacate stuff, they should try not to do it during that time. It's a more somber time, and we're careful during that time. There's a certain negative hashpah, as we said. We said Zman is for good things, but it's also for bad things. There are good times and there are bad times during the Jewish calendar as well. Okay, I just want to jump. We're going to skip a few things because we really don't have time. I apologize. I brought a lot of it here. Wow.
So whatever we don't see right now, are we skipping? Like,
Yeah.
Sorry,
You have
I'm
to,
looking at it.
just because I have to get to the. Okay, page 120. Okay, so you have the headlines. That's the most important thing. So why are we missing without the temple? Basically, don't think the temple is just a synagogue, and without it, okay. But now we have synagogues that we can pray in instead. Okay, we are missing a lot without the Beit HaMikdash. It was the epicenter of the Jewish people. It was the place that was set up, which started with the Mishkan, the tabernacle that went with us unportably. Eventually was given permanent residence in Yerushalayim. And without it, we're missing the key access point to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to God. That's the way to look at it. Since then, nothing has been the same for the Jewish people. Nothing has been the same without the Jewish people. Why? Because we know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu said in the Torah, Asu li mikdash v'shochanti b'tocham. Build for me a holy place, and I shall dwell in it. B'tocham. That's what it says in the Torah. This is a reference to the Mishkan, and eventually the Beit HaMikdash, which took the implements from the Mishkan. However, there's another way to read that verse to say that Hashem dwells within the Jewish people when the Mishkan and the Beit HaMikdash is standing. So once the temple was destroyed, there is some diminishing of Hashem's presence, or our way to access Hashem, because Hashem is constant, God is constant, but our way to access Hashem to some degree is missing with the destruction of the temple. Hashem's Shekhinah is also in Galut. It's not just the Jewish people who were kicked out and the temple destroyed. Hashem's Shekhinah was kicked out as well. Let's have a look on page 120. It says the Yalkut Shimoni, Keva and Sheshashfu, since they burned the temple, the Holy One, blessed be He, page 120, note 1, Shuv en li moshav ba'aretz. He says, I have no longer resting place in my land. It's no longer mine. And he says, Ella asel shechinati b'mena, I'm going to remove my Shekhinah. Hashem's Shekhinah is always there, but there's something lacking. There is a chis from the destruction of the temple till the building of the third temple. There is something lacking from the Jewish people, and definitely from Eretz Yisrael. Okay, so what you get at the Kotel today is a drop in the ocean to what the Jewish people had in the times of the Beit HaMikdash. I'm just going to show you how bad it was. One more second. Let me just go through some piece of information. The destruction of the temple really, to some degree, is like a destruction of the world. Because remember, Hashem built the world for us to live in, and then we built the Mishkan for Hashem to live in. So we destroyed Hashem's home. That's the way to look at it. The destruction of the Beit HaMikdash that we allowed to happen for spiritual reasons. Key one, which we mentioned already, is Lashon Hara, and Sinat Chinam we're going to see, which is related to Lashon Hara. So Sinat Chinam, baseless hatred, and Lashon Hara, everyone agrees, are synonymous. That created the first of a Tisha B'Av in the Midbar with the spies, and it's going to create a lack of a Beit HaMikdash in Yerushalayim, Dusan to Galut. So Galut is the key. So Lashon Hara, Sirat Chinam, and Galut are the trifecta. Okay.
Wait, can you, what are those things?
Sure. We have baseless hatred, Sirat Chinam.
What's the point of them?
I'll show you right now. Baseless hatred, and we have Lashon Hara. Yeah?
Yeah.
And we have Galut, exile. All these three are connected. They're all one thing. What started in the Midbar with the sin of the spies, which was Lashon Hara, which led to hatred towards each other, right? They started hating each other, they killed each other, they got into arguments. That ended up the Jewish people remaining in the desert an extra 40 years. So this is the trifecta that we have to avoid. Tisha B'Av, that happened on Tisha B'Av. So Tisha B'Av represents
What
this.
is
Means exile.
Exile. Jewish people outside of Israel or outside Yerushalayim. Because actually the Greek exile, we were in Israel but kicked out of the Beit HaMikdash. So we're saying exile isn't just a physical exile of the Jewish people from Israel, it's also an exile of Hashem's Shechina from Israel and the Jewish people to some degree. Hashem's presence is reduced by this. And the key over here is Lashon Hara, Sirat Chinam, Lista Galut. So now we're like, okay, so if that's true, how about the destruction of the Second Temple, which happened many, many years later? However, 70 AD, but definitely corresponds to this. In the time of the Second Temple, the rabbis tell us it happened again. And what was that? There was a lot of Lashon Hara, there was a lot of baseless hatred one to each other. Hashem destroyed the temple because of Sinat Chinam. That's why Hashem destroyed the Second Temple, because we didn't like each other. That left open a door for the Romans to come and destroy that which was already decreed to be destroyed. And that led to us being exiled. And that's the fourth and last exile of the Jewish people that we are still in. Are we getting it? So it occurs again and again and again. These are the traits, and this is the result. So that's one thing, divine presence.
What happened again and again? I don't.
That we keep leading to our own destruction by speaking Lashon Hara, not liking each other, not having respect for each other, and destruction and exile. And by the way, the Gemara says any generation that doesn't get to rebuild Yerushalayim is as though they destroyed it. So the fact we don't have it means we have to work on this area. Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know if it's related to that, but can we say that the Beit HaMikdash is b'diavad and not mechatchila, because like the whole point is us believing in God. We don't need like a place. We don't.
The Ramban does say that the Mikdash wasn't the original plan. The original plan was for every Jew, every person individually to connect to Hashem until the Chet HaEgel, until the sin of the golden calf, and then plan B kicked in, and Hashem says, it's not going to work alone, you've got to do it together. You're lacking teamwork, and therefore the Mishkan, whatever that means, that's my expression, not the Ramban's, but the Mishkan was, if you will, plan B. But once it became, that was it. So that became the thing, and it became the Beit HaMikdash 1, 2, and then one of the proofs that Mashiach is Mashiach is the building of the third Beit HaMikdash. So once we had that, it's done. History changed. You're right, maybe L'chatchila, according to the Ramban at least, this was not the best way, but after that it was.
Is there an order to the basis Lashon Hara leads to basis and then Galu, or?
Seemingly, Sinat Chinam is the main thing. It's all connected, at least the Galut, or keeps us in Galut.
Sinat Chinam is which one of the Lashon Hara baseless?
Basis hatred is Sinat Chinam.
Oh, baseless is
Yeah.
fine. Thank you.
Okay?
It's a nice bar Torah.
As well as this, prophecy, Nevuah, was removed, right? Which was the clear channel to Hashem. It lasted for 1,000 years among the Jewish people at the time of the Exodus from 1313 BCE until 40 years after the rebuild of the Beit HaMikdash, 313 BCE, right? And then it went away as well. So we see that since the destruction of the first temple and into the second temple, prophecy has been lost as well. So our communication with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, Nevuah, has gone as well. As I always say, the Jewish people are no longer a prophet organization. Okay, so let's just jump to page 121.
Do we have to know those dates? 13.
They're good dates to know. I've done that for this course. I don't expect it. It's just good to know, but I don't expect it.
Oh.
Okay. So what do we do? So we know that Beit HaMikdash is all about Simcha, right? That's the symbol Beit HaShueva and Sukkot. Okay. So basically, the destruction of it is going to be leading to Bechia, to crying, the opposite of Simcha. So we reduce our Simcha at this time. We reduce our Simcha at this time, right? And that's how we live up to that time itself. Okay? There's going to be less Simcha happening for the Jewish people because of that. I know I'm jumping around, I apologize.
What's the exact time?
The 9 days leading up to Tisha B'Av.
We're not talking about the 3 weeks, like overall.
Over 3 weeks overall is one level. And then 9 days it becomes more intense, the 9 days before.
Of Seder?
Right, yeah.
Okay.
From Rosh Chodesh Tisha B'Av. And then the week it falls in, Shavuot Shel Cholbo. Many people, many Sephardim become more intense. And then the day itself is the most intense. So we go from one fast to another fast. Shiva Asa B'Tammuz to Tisha B'Av, and the days in between. Let's have a look inside page 123 so you know I'm not making it up. Jump a little bit.
122?
123.
We're skipping 123?
Yeah. So we know that 3 things led to the destruction of the first Beit HaMikdash. And what are they, says the Gemara? They were idolatry, avodah zarah, sexual immorality, gilui arayot, and shvichot damim, bloodshed. The second Beit HaMikdash, we're told, was destroyed, page 124, because of sinat chinam. So we're like, 1 second. The first temple was destroyed because of the 3 cardinal sins, avodah zarah, gilui arayot, and shvichot damim. Idol worship, sexual immorality, and murder. Second temple, it just says baseless hatred. From here they learn out something unbelievable, and that is baseless hatred. This thing over here, right, of which Lashon Hara is a part, but not exclusive. It could involve revenge, burying a grudge, murder, and a lot of other things. This is equal to the 3 cardinal sins, equal to the 3 harog v'le'avos sins. So that means the beginning of those 3 of the major sins that a person has to give their life up for, and eventually we did, starts with baseless hatred. Right? The Gemara and Chazal connect the 2. They connect the 2. Okay? Have a look at the Gemara itself, page 124. So why was the temple destroyed? They were very from in the time of the second temple. They were osek b'Torah and mitzvot and gibel chasadim. B'bnei macharav. Why did Hashem destroy it? Mipnei she'ayta bo sinat chinam. There was sinat chinam. L'lamedcha sheshkula sinat chinam keneged shlosh averot avodah zarah glirat shvich damim. We equate baseless hatred with those 3 major sins. Okay. I just have to mention as a side point the story the Gemara mentions, and this is the Gemara that everyone studies on Tisha B'Av, of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa. Kamsa and Bar Kamsa. Now this is one story, but for some reason Chazal plucked this one story and say, this is what I'm talking about. If you know what baseless hatred is, this is the story you have to learn. Now there's many, many more examples. It wasn't just one group. But you see, not only, by the way, is it a bad story, this was actually one of the catalysts that directly led to destruction, as we'll see in a second. There were 2 people, Kamsa and Bar Kamsa, most likely a father and a son. Bar Kamsa means the son of Kamsa. Okay. And one of them had a friend, and this friend of one of them was an enemy of another one. That means there was a father and son. The father had a friend, and this friend of the father was an enemy of his son. You with me? So Kamsa was his friend, and Bar Kamsa was his enemy. The guy throws a party, and he invites everyone. And by mistake, he invites Bar Kamsa and Kamsa. Right? His, the invitation, the email went to the wrong address. Right? Instead of kamsa@gmail.com, went to barkamsa@gmail.com, and he got invited by mistake. He turns up at the party, thinking, "Oh, this guy wants to make shalom with me." Comes to the party. The guy's like, "What are you doing at my party? I hate you." And it's like, "Okay, look, can I just say I'm here now?" He's like, "No, get out my party." And he's like, "I will pay for everything."
I think one of your students left this like any other building, and it has notes in it and whatever.
Okay, thank you
And
so much. I appreciate it. Anyone lacking one of these books?
It
I
has
think
notes
it's
in
very
it.
personal.
It has notes in it.
Yeah.
Oh, is this class?
Oh, no, I think it's
Yeah.
mine.
Is it this class though?
It's this class.
Oh, it's mine.
Yeah.
I just want to know.
Oh, so funny, Lindsay. What the
You
hell?
post the notes and
How
stuff.
really have you there for no time whatsoever? Okay. So Kamsa Bar Kamsa. So he invites him and says, you know what, I'm going to pay for my meal, let me stay. He's like, I don't care about the money. He's like, I'll pay for everyone's meal. He goes, no. He goes, I'll pay for the entire party, just don't embarrass me. He ended up being removed. There were great dignitaries and rabbis who were there. They didn't open their mouths to protect him. He went along. He ended up becoming an enemy of the Jewish people. He ended up snitching. If that word in America, snitching? Talking bad about
Snitching is like tattletale.
tattletale, that's right. And snitches get stitches, remember that. And that's what he did. He spoke Lashon Hara about the Jewish people to the Romans, and he started doing various things and making fun. It basically, after a long story, the Gemara says, it ended up being the Romans believed his story, they trusted him over the rabbis, ended up saying, these people are going to cause us trouble, and ended up destroying the base of Mikdash. So this is actually one story that literally directly led to this reality. Okay? Interestingly, the key of that story is busha, embarrassment. Right? They embarrass this guy barabim. We know that embarrassing a person barabim is the worst sin you can do. It's equal, yes, in public, it's equal to murder. That's what Rashi tells us. And it's actually called malbim panav because a person's face becomes white when they're embarrassed. Right? The blood drains from their face, and the blood drains. They say, oh, it's like murder. And it's not a capital. We don't kill a person for embarrassing somebody, but to some degree we equate the two. Yeah.
Is it the same? Is it only in public or like what if it's
Only in public. Only in public. If you tell someone, I'm upset what you did to me, all right? Actually, that's a mitzvah. You should tell them. But doing it in public, other people to see, is a terrible, terrible sin. Terrible, terrible sin. People remember. By the way, I've had people tell me how they're still upset with teachers and friends from their childhood embarrassing them in public.
Oh,
Kids carry this with them as well. Okay?
that's why
And look at the Gemara says this. Rabbi Elazar says, Baura, come and see Kama Gedola Kocha Shel Busha, how bad embarrassment is, right? Which is Beinam Chaveiro. Sharei Si HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Gar Kamsa. HaKadosh Baruch Hu helped Bar Kamsa, he helped him. Vechriv et Beitov Serev et Hechalo. He destroyed the temple and he burnt it down and burnt his temple. Okay, so embarrassment is part of it. Interesting, the Maral says the word Kamsa, remember we said names define missions. The word Kamsa itself means division. He was someone who was divisive, it's built into his nature. Now he could have used that, we assume, for the positive Kamsa, Bar Kamsa. He could have used it to divide, I don't know, enemies, but he used it to divide Hashem from the Jewish people. Okay? And that's why the Chavetz Chaim says, and the Chavetz Chaim spent his entire life just railing on this topic, page 125, note 6, and he says at the end of the Second Temple, baseless hatred, sinat chinam, and lashon hara was everywhere. It abounded, right? And for this reason, the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed. Okay? So we're going to learn, those come to my Mashiach class next semester, so that means to build the Beit HaMikdash, it must be the opposite of sinat chinam, which is Chesed, Avat Yisrael. No, there's no Avat
Wait,
Chinam.
embarrassing anyone?
Avat Chinam
Probably
is
the
free love.
same
That's
or-
1960s.
Somewhat specific.
There's one example of Sinat Chinam is embarrassing other people in public. That's one example of it. There's a lot more. There's tons more.
It's okay, we only have to know one, right?
That's good enough.
Thank you.
That is good enough. And that's why I look at page 126, just to see the Sfas Emes, very famous piece. Since baseless hatred Lashon Hara destroy the temple, Avad Yisrael, through Avad Yisrael, nivne Bezrat Hashem, it will be rebuilt. That is everything you need to know in a nutshell.